Hello and welcome to the very first edition of Look Blues Talking. Stranraer FC's all singing, all dancing. I was trying to come up with a name for it. Is it a vlog? Is it a video log? Is it a vlog cast? I don't know. Anyway, we're in sound and in vision. That might be better for you. It might not, but you can always just switch the brightness on your screen right down and you won't have to see us. As long as you keep the volume up, of course, then you'll get words of wisdom from us. Anyway, I'm Laurence Nelson. Hopefully, if you are a regular listener to previous podcast, you'll know who I am. You'll also be familiar with my sidekick Galaxy Tab A, who's also appearing with us tonight, better known as Brian Martin. Joining us from the Stranraer FC media team, Cameron Ritchie, George Frank, and iPhone, otherwise known as Gary Redhead. So, Cameron, coming to you first. You'll be familiar to loads and loads of people. You were on our podcast many times, but also from the Beyond the Bandstand videos. So tell us briefly, for those who don't know you, your involvement with Stranraer FC, how did it all come about? When did you first get dragged kicking and screaming to the Ecogen Stadium at Stair Park?
First game would have been 2007, I think. After I'd started at the Free Press. First game was against Montrose. Michael Mullen scored the only goal of the game in the second half. Could not tell you what the second game I went to was, but I at least remember the first one. So that's kind of my involvement, and yeah, been covering the team kind of pretty regularly ever since, really, right up to today.
And I think just one other point that I would like to make, that you moved on from the Free Press. You are no longer resident in God's country like a couple of others are on here tonight, but that hasn't stopped you continuing to follow Stranraer.
No, not at all. I've been away longer than I was ever in Stranraer now, which seems kind of slightly crazy. But no, let's say long time gone, but increasingly familiar with the A77.
That's scarily. I think Brian and me might both be away longer than we were actually there as well now. George Frank, our video wizard, you're the man. When we get Brian and I get credit for the highlights, we immediately turn around and point out that without you filming, editing, producing, and probably more to the point, coming up with ideas, it wouldn't be half as good as it actually is. But George, tell us, likewise, as I asked Cameron, how did you first get involved at Stair Park?
Yeah, I don't know how I came to be in front of the camera tonight. I quite like being behind it, but yeah, I started out in terms of the kind of volunteering stuff. Started out doing the kind of social media side of things that Gary does now, doing your kind of Twitter updates and that kind of thing. Um, Came to the club, I would say late in life. I was a teenager, kind of coming along to the games, and it was during I think it was the Ferguson and Britain era, and there wasn't much to get excited about
Mhm.
when I came along. So I didn't get the bug straight away. It was only when Keith Knox was manager, and you started getting Craig Malcolm, Sean Winter, Armandone, a much more kind of exciting Stranraer that I felt that I could identify with it. It was worth kind of coming along on a Saturday and coming along more often. But yeah, that was the kind of start of my journey with Stranraer, and then somehow I've gained job after job and ended up doing highlights and various other things.
I was going to say credit to both of you starting out around about 2007, 2008 and continuing, but I think that's a conversation for another time. Why having come once, we all got the bug and kept coming back. Gary, for you, I'm guessing like myself, it ran in the family.
I never got a choice, Lawrence. This was given to me at birth. I used to get told stories that my dad and mum used to abandon me in the tunnel, and I would get pushed about in the pram in the tunnel just till I was available. So my dad was on the committee at Stranraer when I was born. I think 20 plus years he was on, so I was quite lucky in my upbringing following the club. I used to get taken home and away, so I used to get to experience the different boardrooms and things like that from a very young age. And it was brilliant because obviously when you're at school and that, and you're looking at football players, you look up to them. I was actually getting to travel on the team bus and
Yeah.
thought it was absolutely top of the world, amazing. And then just eventually, when he had came off the committee, I was kind of getting to the age where I wanted to do more with the club. And then basically, George took a kind of step back, like you said, from the social media side of things. I joined the media team. And then a week later, I think it was literally a week later, there was a group of boys, 6 years old, on fundraising during COVID. It was, I can't even remember the figure. I had tens of thousands of pounds raised for the club, and there was a space in the committee, and the committee came to the group and said, "There's a space here that if any of you guys would like to jump on." I was about 4 pints deep, right enough, when I made the call to join, but I don't regret it. Obviously, I'm on the committee now in the media office as well. And, it's like I said, never got a choice, but we'll never change it either.
Yeah, exactly. Do you remember what the sort of first? So obviously, if you're going in the pram, but can you remember what's the first sort of team and manager you can consciously remember?
No. It's just literally that. It's always been there and always been part of my life. My youngest kind of memories, I remember a promotion. I want to say it was from Division 2 to Division 3 at the time to Division 2. I just remember I wasn't with mum and dad in the stand because they were obviously working behind the scenes, but I was with somebody else looking after me, and they wouldn't let me onto the pitch, and I was absolutely fuming. Absolutely fuming that I couldn't get onto the pitch like everybody else was. And then I know it's all kind of jumps to and from. Remember getting to go to Hampden when Queen's Park were there, and anyone's been in Hampden down the stairs is the away changing room. And then next to the away changing room is this door that you go through. It's a big, massive like warm up 3G facility. Yeah, and my dad couldn't find me. I was in there kicking a ball into the goals, just as close to kick-off as I could get. But that's probably the kind of earliest sort of memories I can say I have.
And you've stuck with it. Brian Martin, you could have ended up as a Queen of the South fan.
Yep, you're right, Lawrence. I was brought up in a Queen of the South house, even though we stayed in Dunraggett. My dad was a Queen supporter. My brother was a Queen supporter. Right enough, he supported anybody that was winning. One day he'd be a Rangers supporter, the next day he'd be a Celtic supporter. Never was winning, but he was a Queen supporter as well. And I can definitely remember it was the 60s. It was a committee picking the team at that time, and it was mobbed in the coo shed. And I think I've told the story 100 times. That my dad put me down at the front, and he was standing in the middle with the rest of the guys, his work colleagues for the Forest Commission in Dunraggett. And I can't remember the score, Lawrence. I think it was one each, but I can't remember. And but that's it. 1960. I would say 64, 65. So that's what about 55 year, is it? I'm 70 next year, so that's 55 year.
It's like a double life sentence, really, when you look at it.
60 year, actually.
And likewise, I've told my story loads of times. It really annoys me that I can't remember what my first game was, but I know late 60s, I was allowed to go and watch the wee team games. So it was the wee team and the big team. And sounds crazy now, my mum wouldn't let me go to the big team games for a couple of years because the crowds were too much. And to be fair, they were probably about 1,500 at that point. So she just thought it was too much. I know I must have been going fairly regularly by 71, 72, because I do remember the excitement of the Celtic League Cup tie in August 72. And us going 1-0 up after 4 minutes and me being convinced, that's it, we've won. I believe we also went 1-0 up in the away leg, but we lost 7-3 on aggregate. But like Gary, never got a lot of choice. My father watched Stranraer. His father, who I never met, he also watched Stranraer. My brother watched Stranraer, and I wouldn't change it for the world. So there you go, guys. That's where we all come into the picture. And food for thought for everybody watching. What was your first game? Can you actually remember it? What was the first team what got you hooked, I guess? Why do we come along even at times when the team ain't doing well, but actually somehow we keep coming back? One of the things we're going to go over tonight is the season pass. So 2024-2025 is finished. We ended up 8th in League Two. Whether you think that's good, bad or indifferent is very much a matter of opinion. But I think, Cameron, what we will all say is we would have bitten hands off. It was a change of manager during the season. We would have bitten Aggie or Tiff's hand off last August if we'd been told we were going to finish eighth after last season's finish.
I think so. I think so. As much as everybody, I say everybody of a Stranraer persuasion enjoyed Stranraer staying up. I'm sure East Kilbride fans will be sitting shaking their heads at that. But as much as we all enjoyed the kind of scenes at Stair Park when we stayed up, equally, I think there was very much yeah, we don't want to go through that again if we can help it. As enjoyable as that was, let's try not to do it again next year, which obviously we have done.
And Brian, you were actually somebody who said it was the best footballing day of your life when we beat East Kilbride, and one or two folk queried you on that because actually we were Club 42 and scraping our way to avoiding the drop, I guess. But again, like others, you just don't want to go there again. And I guess we've succeeded this season from that point of view.
Yeah, I mean, I must admit, when I watched the Bonnyrigg game in August, late August, the day Aggie resigned, I must admit, I thought we were going to be, right down the bottom again because I think that's the worst performance I've seen for Stranraer team for years. I think it was so bad, and I stood beside Tom Brindley's dad and I said, "This is really just echoes of last season." You
Yeah.
know what I mean? And that night Aggie resigned, and we're still running great in the month of September. But Tiff came in and proved his big time. So I mean, it was. I don't know. I mean, it was. We just didn't want to go back through what we did last season, and we improved to be eighth. I know it's. I mean, circumstances. I think gave us a points total because I think if we'd been maybe fighting for our lives, we'd have had a bigger points total. But I don't say the players, relaxed a wee bit, but I think we knew we were safe. I mean, I said we were safe when we were 37 points against these five. It proved correct because
Yeah.
top team was in 36, but I mean, we lost. I think we lost five or six with the last seven games, was it, or six out of seven? So I mean, it was a poor start, end to the season, but we're just glad to be, where we are.
Gary, I don't expect you to divulge loads of boardroom secrets or anything here, but what kind of went through, if you like, the collective mind of the committee that night when, or the next day when you found out that Scott had resigned and we were, as Brian says, a couple of months into the season, no looking great, and we had to start again, basically.
I think football moves that quick, Lawrence, that there's no time to kind of have any self pity or anything like that. It was a case of the kind of collective like this has happened now. Like that's it. We need to move on. I think the good thing was it was so early in the season that the kind of collective feeling was, well, we've got time. We don't have to panic and make an appointment tomorrow or the next day, and that's what ended up happening. It probably drew out maybe slightly longer than what people would like to see, but I think it was important to take the time and make the right appointment. And I think obviously Tiff coming in, it's proven definitely the right appointment. I think everyone was chuffed at the time when they heard who it was, and you've seen performances obviously a lot better collectively, individually as well. And I think the run kind of February time through March, kind of that's the kind of what we're expecting it to eventually come round to. But obviously it takes time for what's not his group of players to get across his methods and the way he wants to play.
Yeah, exactly. George, we had that interim period when Robbo tried his hand at management, and I guess again we talked about the low among fans, if you like, when Aggie left. But I think a lot of people also gave him credit for, as Gary said, resigning fairly early on, give us a chance to put things right. Robbo tried his hand, and I guess it must have been quite a defining moment in people's minds when not only had Aggie quit, but Robbo wanted to tried it, and very quickly said, "No, this isn't for me. It's not working." That again must have concentrated minds that things need to turn around.
Yeah, I think that was a confirmation that we needed to go in a different direction, and I think it was right that Robert got his shot at it and got a chance, and yeah, it's all turned out for the best. And so, like Gary says, sometimes it's a case of taking a bit of time to make sure that it is the right call that you're making. And we did consider all options, including those that no one knows about, that were on the table. And eventually we've managed to avoid the situation we were in last season, so it can only be good.
I think I'll just echo that. You were quite right not to go with a special one. I don't think it would have fitted in at Stair Park at all.
There were definitely some special ones on the shortlist.
Cameron, let's look at the positives of the season just past. Good memories, where we've made progress. What do you think?
I think in terms of results, the two that stand out for me, one, I'll start with a strange one. First of all, first league game of the season against Spartans. Darren Lang and Robbie Foster up front looked good. We go 2-0 up. The sun's shining. Early season optimism. If you're not optimistic on the first day of the league season, then I don't know, go find somewhere else to be. I think every football fan that first day of the season thinks, we're going to win the league, going to be in the playoffs, whatever. And yeah, I think everyone was full of optimism then and kind of thought that Stranraer, we've stayed up, we've survived. Now we're going to kick on. Obviously, things didn't really work out that way. The other kind of in terms of results, positive for me, and I'm sure I'm lucky I'm getting to be the first one to answer this because I'm sure everyone else will say it as well. But the Three Rovers Cup game,
Yeah.
where we were stinking for 65 minutes, I think would be the term.
Yeah.
We pull one goal back, three start to tire, and all of a sudden it becomes, right, do we have enough time to get an equaliser? Do we have enough time to get a winner? And sure enough, we go and get the job done. And I don't know if it's because it's the Scottish Cup. I don't know if it's because it was non-league opposition, non-league local opposition. The fact it was under the floodlights on a Friday night in front of TV cameras. But I think it's just a game that's going to kind of stick in the memory of fans for years and years to come.
Yeah, I mean, sure, it's going to stick in the memory. And I guess the Broxburn game in the next round is going to be one that they conveniently shoved out to the side and forgotten about.
I
Brian,
don't even remember it already.
well, absolutely not. I had to remind myself of that this afternoon. Who did we play? Brian, the Cameron's right. There was early optimism, and I guess maybe we even fooled ourselves at that early stage that losing 1-0 at Clyde was pretty good because everybody was saying Clyde were league favourites, if you believe them.
Yeah, again, Clyde wasn't our favourite place during the year, was it? During the season, we beat there a couple of times, but I mean, extremes from Spartans in the first game of the season to Bonnyrigg in the last day of August. I mean, it was so extreme for being pretty good against Spartans to being pretty rubbish against Bonnyrigg. And it was so, the two extremes. But I do agree with Carmen. I loved the game against. I think I said to you, Lawrence. I think that's how it was. I think when we went 2-0 down, couldn't see us coming back for it. And I'm usually an optimist, but that night I just says, nah, that's us. But as I say, the rest is history as we fought back to win 3-2. Also, the games against Edinburgh City, I thought were pretty special. I thought we were really good in them two games. With the way Tiff set us up, and Edinburgh City are a good possession team, but the way we played out of possession in them two games, plus the East Fife game, I think the games stand in my mind. The 3-1 victory. I think they stand in my mind. Was it 3-0 or 3-1? Anyway, they stand in my 3-0. They stand in my mind as as good games we played last season.
Gary, there were particular, I think Brian's mentioned a lot of them, but on the road, the ones that stand out for me, apart from three, obviously, Darren Lang's goal was something to behold, and just that image in my mind of Darren and Ryan standing up in that TV gantry with the spotlights on them at the end, going out live on the telly, it was quite special, and I think everybody in their Dogfest and our persuasion got back along the road or up the road or wherever home and immediately reached for the TV buttons to have a look back at what had happened that night. But I would throw in, as well as the East Fife away games, the Edinburgh City away games, Tuesday night in December at Spartans when we come back from 1-0 down to win 3-1. There were enough games that showed a sense of what the team is capable of.
Yeah, just to hark back to Cameron was saying about the Spartans game. After the went 2-0 up, I had us winning the league, so I was convinced that was it. We're the best team in the world. But I think we're talking about away from home. The one that sticks out to me is the Edinburgh City win up there. It was the first win in the league away from home since the first game of last season. That was
The Gillet game.
the Gillet game. Aye, Pogo will remember it well. But just the fact that a combination of things, obviously, it was Tiff's first game in charge.
Yeah.
And the fact we also hadn't won away from home in the league since the first game of the previous season, it couldn't have failed any better, the combination of the two. And it was collectively two birds with one stone. That's the saying, isn't it? Two birds with one stone. Something like that, isn't it? For him to get his first game, his first win, and a win away from home from us as well.
Yeah. George, have we missed anything you've been listening away to us there from a putting together the highlights point of view? What sticks out from the season? Which ones have got sort of magic moments or special moments?
I was racking my brain there after Brian had reeled off every single win
Yeah.
we've had this season. But the a couple of the ones you'd mentioned came to me as well. The Spartans opening day, seeing a glimpse of what Robbie Foster was capable of up there with Darren Lang, and just that attacking intent that we showed at the start of the season. The Edinburgh City win, Spartans away, in particular the Fox on the pitch.
Yeah.
For me, for the highlights, love that. The more wildlife, the better. The pony.
Yeah.
And absolutely magnificent. Off comes the little pony.
I think if I was going to pick a game that hasn't been mentioned yet, I'd say probably Forfar away. Grant Gallagher with the captain's goal and winning at Station Park for the first time in years and years, and that was just enough to steer us out of that relegation spot.
Foster sends it in the middle. Gallagher headers it,
and
it's a goal! Mark McCallum got a hand to it but couldn't hold it, and Grant Gallagher's shot goes into the net.
I was going to say, worth remembering, if we had lost, I think it was 2-0 that day, we would have gone 10th. And, that would have had real echoes of that second last game of last season that we all kind of look back on. Bit of thought, guys. So where do you think we've progressed this season, and where do you think we still need to progress? Brian, I'll come to you first because you've always got plenty to say.
I think he's definitely improved at the defence. Bringing Docherty in was a masterstroke in my mind. Plus Lewis Reed. These two, have definitely improved the defence. Big time. I think anyway. We know we lost McIntosh. After the Bonnie night game, and Docherty came on. I think it was 60 odd minutes that night, and even then you could see, he was a bit of a player, and I think he's been a big mark up. And you've had the young keeper Josh Lane who come in, and who done really really well, and that, I think I said this in the chat today. I think Tiff is looking at defence first. We've got to we were far too good at giving goals away, even at the start of last season. We've seen it against the Spartans, lost 2 late goals, and it continued throughout the first month or two. We need to tighten up the defence, and I think we ended up being the third best defence in League Two, which is testament to Tiff. And that is a bit, we've got, they say if you don't lose goals, you don't lose games. And I think he's spot on by getting that absolutely right, and then working his way up the team, and see what he can get midfield and attack. But I think the defence is the main area.
Cameron, you're well known for liking a statistic, and I was laughing when Brian was talking about young Josh there, just thinking the number of keepers, the keeper issue that's kind of dogged us a bit over the last, 2, 3, 4 years. It continued this season. I guess, like last season with Bud, this season we got a couple of keepers that actually looked the part, but it was just bit parts from them in terms of the overall season.
Yeah, I think the fact that 5 goalkeepers stepped on the pitch for Stranraer plus 2 unused subs, you don't want to have 7 goalkeepers over the course of a season. I think telling...
Unless you're Scott Brown.
But I think the telling thing was, and kind of points to what Brian was saying, that the first 2 people in the door after Chris was Robbie Much. Obviously realised, Tiff obviously done his homework before he came in, realised we need a solid, experienced, dependable goalkeeper. Robbie Much came in, and we need to improve in defence, and Lewis Reed came in. And I think both of those signings, although obviously Robbie Much was a bit more, was more short term, I think both of those paid off. Looking forward, I had a quick check before this. We conceded 16 goals in the last 10 minutes of games,
Mm.
which is obviously you're dropping points left, right, and centre when it's like that. And that's going to come back to haunt you. I know some people were saying that, oh, we only finished 4 points clear of Bonnyrigg and Forfar, and if Bonnyrigg hadn't had their points deduction, but again, as Brian said earlier, ifs, buts, and maybes, I don't believe for a start that we would have had such a kind of dip in form over the last few weeks. I think we would have picked up many more points. I think the end of the season was as much Chris kind of getting his ducks in a row, looking at the different players, different positions, different setups, etc.
Yeah.
As I say, I think if we were in genuine trouble, I think the foot would have remained down and we would have picked up more points.
Agree. We've not looked at one or two other areas of the park, Gary. We were all chuffed to see Marky Russell coming in at the start of the season. Now he hit double figures for us, which is probably not unprecedented, but certainly in terms of the last couple of seasons, it was nice to see somebody getting 10 goals. And I would say, in my opinion, even in the last few games where we struggled a wee bit, he was trying his best to actually be a commanding influence in the middle of the park. Other thoughts I'd had was that Darren Lang looked as if he was becoming more physical under Chris and Ginge. So, although we're talking about the defence, we're talking about limiting teams, we're talking about having the third best defence, we're still not a free scoring team, but actually it looked a bit more promising this season than it had the one before.
Yeah, I think with Mark Russell, what we've got is it's genuine quality, but not just that. It's match-winning quality. It's something we've not had too often but the last couple of years. Certainly, is a player who can genuinely pick the ball up wherever it is in the park, and he's going to create a bit of magic or set one up or score himself. Over 10 goals anyway for a midfielder. It's not a bad return. I think with Darren, you definitely seen progression again this year, and the same with Ryan as well.
Yeah,
obviously it's Darren had his first season in the leagues last year. Ryan's first full season this year. I think from the start to the end of the season, we've seen progress in both. Niggling injuries with Darren's probably kind of halted him a little bit, and he's you can see he's frustrated about that. I think if he can get a proper good run of games, you would maybe see the difference from the start to the end of that as well.
Yeah. George, from your perspective, it's only 4 points difference, but I agree with Cameron. I think we had the safety sewn up a few weeks before the end, even though it wasn't mathematically ensured. I think there was definitely progress. Looking forward, where would you like to see us continuing to improve? Where do you think we need to actually strengthen a little bit?
I think there's a couple of areas for me that we obviously need to improve in, and I think centre midfield is one that stands out. I think Aaron Quigg and Kirk McKnight have looked good in there and added a bit more kind of energy and youthful exuberance, if you want to put it like that. But they probably need to develop this season. They probably need some experience, some new experience in there with them. And we've kind of touched upon the options up top. Again, I think Darren and Ryan have improved this season. All four of our strikers offer something and offer something different. It's maybe just a case of finding that consistency and picking which ones are going to be taking the club forward.
Yeah. So we are recording this on Tuesday night, and we're aware that I think this is the night that the manager has said he's going to be speaking to the existing players. He's been quite open about the fact that he's been out there looking at new players coming in. I wouldn't expect there to be any announcements until he's actually ready to sign people. So there might be guys out there who are still playing for clubs. But tonight is the night that he's talking to the existing players, and it's a difficult one as a manager. Brian, I wouldn't like to be in that position where you're having to say to somebody, I'm making you an offer, but I'm not making you an offer, and thank you very much. It's a difficult
I
one.
think Tiff's been quoted. Lawrence is saying it's probably the most difficult part of his job, is releasing players. And he'll be releasing players who he knows very well, but it's a part of the job of being a manager. I would hate to do it, that's you when we're going to offer you another contract. It must be really hard on him. But I think, I mean, from what I gather, he's no spoke to any player at all about next season. That he's doing it tonight. He's keeping his cards very close to his chest. I wouldn't be surprised over the weekend him and his backroom staff got together and said, right, just like a kind of which used to be called the X Factor. Well, this one's not coming back. That one's not coming back. And I think they maybe got together at the weekend and said, right, we're going to keep him. We're going to keep him. Very, very hard job. I'm maybe a big softy, but I would keep quite a lot of them. But as I say, I'm a softy.
You've anticipated my next question. I'll pin this one on Cameron. Cameron, you and I have talked about this before. That the number of times when we've played well, the temptation is to keep virtually everybody. Then you have a run of defeats, and you're like, these guys finished club 42. These guys finished club 40 now. Should there be wholesale change? It's a real fine balancing act between who you keep, who you don't keep, and who you can bring in to improve things, I guess.
It is. It's difficult. One thing that I think Scott Agnew deserves a lot of credit for is obviously we lost James Dolan at the end of last season.
Yeah.
There's a guy that chipped in with goals and assists, and Elliot Dunlop came in and replaced that seamlessly. So I think it deserves credit for that. It's difficult because, as you say, if you look at it, you go, no, we need to make progress and therefore things need to change. But equally, I'm not for a second suggesting this is the case, but equally, if Tiff turned to everybody in training tonight and it was like, out you go, that's that, you've then got to gel a team together.
Yeah.
Regardless of whether you're bringing in 8 or 22 players, you've got to gel that team together. And equally, if obviously so much of football is a mental side of things, it's a confidence side of things, that if you're bringing them in, it doesn't matter if they start to gel together. If you get off to a slow start, heads are going to go down. And then it becomes increasingly difficult to kind of get things going again. So while I anticipate there will be kind of fairly substantial changes, because you think, going on the theory that each of the loan players will be going back, there's changes straight away before it comes to these players have decided to leave. These players, I no longer feel have a future at the club. There's going to be changes, and hopefully kind of changes for the better, and exciting changes that are going to be a more creative, free goal scoring team, and I think that's what fans want at the end of the day, and hopefully that'll build on the increasing attendances that we've seen throughout the season.
I think another thing, Gary, is that Chris said repeatedly during the January window that people were anxious to see players coming in, and they weren't coming in, and Tiff kept saying it's got to be the right player. And actually, I think he can make a fair claim to the guys he brought in. He brought in the 2 young keepers. He brought in Sean Docherty. He brought in Aaron Quigg. I don't know if I'm missing anybody else. He obviously got Elliot Dunlop back in. I think that was a pretty successful January when you think about it afterwards.
Yep, absolutely. And it's not just the 90 minutes on the park when he's saying he needs to get the right person in. It's not just their ability on the park, it's how hard they train twice a week. And he's seen them twice a week in training. He's seen them obviously on the team bus. If they're coming down the road or up the road and things like that, they need to gel, they need to mix, they need to be the right kind of character as well. So it's not as easy as we might have watched the game in Sarton's Point Rig, might have picked a player that meant, oh, he's good, I'd like to see him join us.
Yeah.
Maybe not necessarily, might not fit in with the rest of the team, or there's a lot of elements that go into the manager picking a player to join the team, all than just what they produce in 90 minutes on a Saturday.
I can go right back to, and Brian certainly can, the Neil Watt Stuart Miller era, where we had a team that won Division 3. We virtually the same team then get promoted out of Division 2 into what is now the Championship. And then the club were lucky enough to bring in a whole host of players who were arguably pretty big name for Stranraer. And it almost worked, but it didn't quite. And I think one of the reasons it didn't work is because we're a much harder division, but another reason is because the team spirit that had been there for the previous 2 seasons was kind of diluted. It was a different group of people. We heard Alan Jenkins saying those players are still meeting up 20 years on and going out and socialising together. So that it's almost like you could say if you get a dressing room that comes together, it's about getting the right player, not just with their ability fitting into the team, but also fitting in with the guys that they're going to be working alongside.
Yep.
George, I'm conscious there's probably a number of players that have played this season we've not mentioned yet. Like Finn Ekrapont works away week in, week out. We've not touched on Robbo and Gal. We've only touched on one or two of the goalkeepers that we've had, But it is going to be interesting to see who is still in the equation, I guess, probably this time next week. And I guess the manager's got to act fairly quickly these days because although thankfully we've got a longer close season this season, we're still probably looking at friendlies in about 6 or 7 weeks' time.
Yeah, well, that's it. I think with you obviously mentioned Robbo there. We've seen how he's always performed well and put his heart and soul into everything. But watching him the last several weeks, even when we're not getting the results, he's been the ultimate professional as you'd expect of him. And if he does go in summer, he can hold his head high and say he's done what he's always done, and there's been no drop off in performance from him.
I was going to say, well, we've got Cameron here. Cameron, can you tell me how close Robbo is to getting that 400 appearances? Do you know off the top of your head? I know he was pretty close to it at one point late in the season.
If he played the League Cup group phase, he'd be on 401. So yeah, he's 3 games away.
He's 3 games away from it. So there. Well, that's the.
I hear he was tempted for us to finish in the playoffs so he could get to 399, but I don't know if that's true.
Aye, which playoff, Robbo?
Well,
speaking of playoffs, actually, as we are recording, the playoffs are kicking off. Tempting just to have a wee quick look through these. It probably makes sense to have a look at the ones that we know the teams in. Brian, you've already said this one's hard to call. Edinburgh City at home to East Fife, Elgin at home to Annan. I'm talking about overall. From those 4 teams, it's quite a tricky one to call.
Oh, I mean, I fancy Annan to survive just, but I think they've got to get results away from home. I think if they take teams back to Galabank and even if they're drawn or one behind, I think they win. But it's very, very hard to call. I don't fancy Elgin because of the grass pitch there. The only ones in the grass pitch. I said this last week in the podcast. The record on a plastic pitch isn't great. They get beat again on Saturday. East Fife. They played a weekend side right enough, but they get beat again. I just don't know. I don't think League Two is great quality this year. And I think if Annan have got anything about them at all, I think they survive.
And we don't really know that. Okay, they put 5 past us in the Challenge Cup. Gary, from a committee point of view, we'd be quite happy to get Elgin going up the way as well. Obviously, Brora ain't coming in, so suddenly nowhere's further away than Forfar.
Aye.
Oh, sorry.
Is that your answer? Aye.
I know. Fingers and toes crossed. Just, I know. To be fair to them, I said to them before I left the second last game there this season, I said, I hope you go up. I never told them the reason why I hoped they went up. But it's certainly better for us than losing both Peterhead and Elgin out of the league and replacing them at Annan and Dumbarton in terms of obviously the closeness, but also in terms of potential away fallings as well for us at home. Boost the covers a bit more than the dedicated fans that travel from Elgin and Peterhead.
George, your thoughts on it? It must be an age thing. I'm getting jaded because I'm not really getting excited about Dumbarton or Annan coming down because it feels as if we see these teams regularly. Ideally Celtic could come down for interesting, but no, don't go there, honest. Your thoughts on these particular playoffs, George?
Yeah, I think I agree on Elgin going up. They seem to be a club that's kind of on the up anyway. Their attendances are up. They're probably sitting as high as they ever have. So it's maybe just the time for them to kind of test the waters in League One. And Annan can come down and bring their fans across to Stair Park, and hopefully our attendances benefit as a result.
Might be a kismet about it, Cameron. If Elgin went up, I think they're the only one of the new teams, Bonnyrigg apart, who are very new, and Spartans, who haven't actually gone up. Elgin have been in the league since around about 2000, I think, and they've never seriously looked like going up. So if they went up, that would be a big thing for them as a club.
Yeah, and I think that, again, given where they were last year, kind of similar type of position that we were in, and then the new manager came in, things improved over that the remaining few months, and they've continued on again this season. I fancy I'm going to go against Brian. I fancy that they'll probably end Annan's stay in League One. I think the other playoff game, it's all about how East Fife deal with that psychological
Aye.
blow of coming so close to winning the league and then to stumble when you're so close to then pick yourself up again and realise that no, we've still got another chance here. We can still go up, but it's the additional 4 games and as I say, getting over that psychological hurdle, which I'm not massively convinced that they will,
No.
because it's not a case of they stumbled on the penultimate day. Their form since the turn of the year hasn't been great,
Yeah.
and to then try to switch that form over the course of 4 games, I think will be really, really difficult.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. I kind of tend to that one as well. Had East Fife won at Peterhead on the penultimate day, I kind of think Peterhead would have had the same issue.
Yeah.
How do you pick yourself up having gone, so close to actually winning the league? Championship playoffs. Brian, your nearly favourites, Queen of the South against Cove, Steny against Airdrie. Again, I find that one quite hard to call. I'm going to be the kiss of death by saying I'd be surprised if Steny did it. I think it's going to be either Queens or Airdrie, to be honest.
Yeah, I fancy it really strongly for this. And Lawrence, I think League One, sorry, is really poor.
Yeah.
And I think Airdrie we've been playing quite well recently. I was talking to a couple of Airdrie boys who really fancied their chances. They've been playing really well recently. They've had some good results, and they fancy their chances to win this. I know it's quite a lottery, but I do fancy Airdrie to survive and playing the championship again next season.
George, is the end of season form a big thing? Because obviously Bonnyrigg have got East Kilbride as well. Bonnyrigg have won 3 in a row. Airdrie have had a decent run in. That probably counts better than the rest of the season. How you've been doing in recent weeks.
Yeah, I think if you're looking at the form, Queens and Airdrie kind of stand out. Airdrie have been okay in recent weeks, and they've obviously got a squad that was built for the championship. They've been playing against quality teams every week, so I think they'll just kind of edge the playoffs. My kind of second pick would be Queens, because I think they've been kind of flying up the league, but I hope it's Airdrie.
I tend to go, it's either going to be Airdrie or Queens. Gary, go on, disagree with us, put us right.
I can't. No, Queens are my fourth pick. Not due to form, I didn't got at all. I'm just a bit biased.
You don't like them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
No, I think Airdrie, listen to a few other managers speaking about Airdrie, they all seem to think they're in a bit of a false position because a lot of players were out throughout the season, and the more players they get back, obviously the better the form they hit. So getting more and more players back, you would fancy them. You'd fancy to beat Steny over 2 legs, and I can't see anybody. The Cove or Queens maybe knock them off either. So it's looking like a clean sweep.
Brian, the playoffs for the Premiership, obviously we don't know yet who's going to be second bottom in the Premier, but we do know that Livy are going to be waiting on the winners of Thistle against Ayr United. Now you are like me, you're old enough to remember Ayr United in the top 10 in the Premier. How do you feel about a return of that, the honest men in the Premier?
I mean, it would be fantastic for Ayr and their fans, but there's a lot to do, haven't they? They've got to play against Thistle tonight, and then they've got to play Livy,
And
and
then
then they've
somebody
got
else.
to play the 11th team in the Premiership. Really, really hard. I mean, I don't know. I don't think that they're good enough to do it. I think the loss of Anton Dowds for Ayr is really dampened their season quite a lot, and I just cannot see Ayr doing it. Although Oakley, who plays up front, is a good player. But I think that the second bottom team in the Premiership again might survive this season, because I think these 3 lower leagues are the greatest quality this season.
It's almost like you wear the teams down that are at the top of the Championship. You've got to play at least a couple of games before you get a crack at, somebody who's been still playing against the top flight teams up till that point. What about the League Two playoffs? So thank God we are not involved in that this year, but East Kilbride are involved again. Gary, we've seen Bonnyrigg recently, I come back to what I said against to George a minute or two ago. Bonnyrigg have won 3 in a row. That must at least give East Kilbride rather, pause for thought.
I think it will. I think it has to. I wonder how scarred they are as well from last year. You know, in terms
Hopefully,
of well, in terms of obviously getting to this position again and what they're faced with. I think it could be the same story again in terms of if Bonnyrigg can go to the EK and if they can come out, relatively unscathed, a draw at least. I think they could potentially do it at home. They'll get a really good backing. Dundas Park, they'll be right on top of them as well. It'll certainly be an occasion if it's still auto play from the second leg. I think the trick for Bonnyrigg is if they can survive the first leg, because obviously EK, I think they scored 7 in 2 games against Brora.
yeah.
So I think it's if they can try and keep the scoring down, try and keep it level going back to the second leg, then they've definitely got a chance against EK.
Cameron, close to your stomping ground. You're East Lothian, but Bonnyrigg's not that far away from East Lothian. I kind of think, with hindsight, what did it for us last year? Well, one of the things that did it for us was what Gary said, the fact that we came away from the K Park with a draw. I don't think Mick Kennedy was planning for that. I think he was planning to maybe not necessarily have the tie dead, but be ahead. Other thought for you. I'm going to be interested to see Mick Kennedy try and plane it out from the back on New Dundas Park. What do you make of that playoff?
I think, as we've said, with it being the 2 games, if it was a one-off, neutral venue, etc., I think automatically I'd probably go East Kilbride.
Yeah.
And I don't really know what I'm basing that on other than kind of being used to winning and the kind of everything that goes along with that. But we said about East Fife and the kind of psychological scars they'll have from coming so close. I don't think it'll bother Bonnyrigg because everything was so stacked against them that you need to win your remaining 3 games to have any chance of staying up. And everyone kind of had them down and dead and buried. And then they go and beat Forfar. All right, well, you still need to win your other 2 games. And then they concede in like the 85th minute or something to Spartans.
Yeah.
And it's right, that's that. And then they go and score with the last kick of the ball. And all right, well, you still need to win your last game to have any chance of staying up. And they go and do that. I think the momentum and the self-belief that will have given them, that they're just not going to fear East Kilbride. There's not going to be that nervousness. I guess the fact that East Kilbride have won the Lowland League before, we've been here before, but we've not got the job done. And I think that fear of you win the Lowland League and then you don't win the
Still
playoff,
don't
and
go.
it's like snakes and ladders. You think you're there at the top, and then it's back to square one for you, I'm afraid. And
Yeah.
you have to kind of start over. And for that reason, and the fact that, as you say, the second leg's at New Dundas Park, and as Gary said, the fans being so right up close, and it'll be not necessarily an intimidating atmosphere, but there'll certainly be an atmosphere about it
Likely. Yep.
that you're perhaps not getting in the nicest possible way. You're not getting in your kind of week to week Lowland League games. That I think there's so much at stake that the pressure, strangely, goes towards the team from the lower league.
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree with that. George, is that, and I'm not being cheeky or condescending to Bonnyrigg here, but is there maybe less nervousness for Bonnyrigg than there was for Stranraer? Because we were in danger of throwing away 70 years of league football. They're in danger of throwing away 2 or 3 years of league football with the prospect that they probably feel they could come back out of the Lowland, whereas it would be quite scary for us. So I'm trying to say, is it maybe less of a big worry, a big millstone round Bonnyrigg's neck this game?
I think that's a fair point. I think they're probably, they'll be worried going in. Like you say, they've come from below the SPFL and they know they can thrive below the SPFL. And I think that's probably the difference. In terms of how it'll go, Cameron's kind of sold me on the idea of Bonnyrigg putting up a good fight. I think a lot of the kind of talk on Pine Bovril and that kind of thing is about if Bonnyrigg can take them to New Dundas Park, they've got a real chance.
Yeah.
And I think they have. But I also think it's a club with a lot of character. It's a club with soul. And sometimes
Yeah.
that's enough to make a difference, and I'd like to think that that they've got enough about them to battle out a draw at K Park in the first leg, and they should do the business in the second leg.
Yeah, thinking back to last year, Brian, I do think more and more with hindsight that we did the bulk of the work coming away from the K Park with the tie still level. That turned into a one-off at our ground.
Yeah, I agree with you, Laurence, and I agree with the guys. I think it's so important that Bonnyrigg stay in the tie in the first game. I can still have visions of John Robertson waltzing through our defence in the first half last season.
Yeah.
You know, he's a class player, and I think they brought in a kid just recently to left back at Bonnyrigg, and I'm a wee bit frightened for them to get a doing there on Saturday. I really am. I hope for Bonnyrig's sake they stay in the tie. But it's the guys who said if they can get a draw or even a 1-0 defeat, you know, they're still well in it. But they really have to. I said that to the media guys, the Bonnyrigg,
Yeah,
on
Saturday.
Saturday. You've got to keep into it. You've got to keep in the first leg because you know they're a team who could put 3 or 4 past Bonnyrigg if they're on song.
Aye. Don't go out hell for leather in the first game.
Yeah.
Keep it tight at the back, kind of thing. So that's the playoffs. And just to say, while we are recording, all of these playoffs have started. 15 minutes in, there's not been a goal anywhere. So it's obviously cagey stuff throughout the divisions. I just wanted to highlight a couple of events happening at the club, both in June. So both evenings out for those of you who won't have the football. So maybe you're looking to fill your social diary. So first up on the 13th of June, there's a sportsman's evening in the Fitba Bar. Dick Campbell, Tam McManus, and Derek Fry. There's a name to conjure with Brian Martin, Derek Fry. That one's £40 a head. That includes your buffet though, and tickets available Fitba Bar or at Ian Aldred's Mace shop. Gary, looking forward to some stories from Dick Campbell of his football career and his management career.
Aye, there were plenty of them. There's plenty of stories to come from Dick. Always enjoyed seeing him when he came to Stair Park as well last season. Always got a smile on his face until kick-off at least.
Absolutely. I think he's a lovely guy. I think he's an honest guy, a straightforward guy. And although we slag the hell out of him in commentary regularly, and George, by the way, if you're going to get a additional cameraman for next season, a touchline cameraman, if we're playing East Fife, just get him to basically go and have a pie and leave the camera focused on the East Fife dugout for 90 minutes. You're absolutely sure I get some cracking footage of Dick in action. And I loved the one that you put on one of the videos where Dick Campbell's raging and shouting at a referee, and he then turned back towards the crowd and there's a wee smile. He knows exactly what he's doing. Absolutely brilliant. So it'd be brilliant to hear some of his stories.
I don't think it'll be the same seeing him at the Fitba Bar without you commentating over it and making fun as you do.
Another booking for Campbell. Derek Fry, club's record goal scorer in the league. Brian and I would have watched him late 70s. Derek Fry and Jim McCabe rather played together, and Derek Fry, I think I'm right in saying £10,000 transfer fee to Dundee United, basically bought the Fitba Bar. First Stranraer bought the social club. That was where the money came from. So how fitting is that he's coming back there to tell us his football stories. Tam McManus, I don't know so much about, although obviously he's well known in the eastern end of Edinburgh. And I'm sure he's got some pretty good stories to tell as well. The other thing that's on 28th of June, Jed Molyneux asked me to remind everybody that Fitba Bar, 28th of June, Bad Reputation and Barstool Rebels, a couple of local bands are going to be playing. There's also going to be a disco afterwards. 15 quid for that one. So 2 bands and a disco. Again, tickets from the Fitba Bar and Ian Aldred's Mace shop at the top of Sun Street. So that's a couple of things to look forward to. By the time we get to the 28th of June, I'd actually be quite surprised, Gary. I know we don't know any yet, but I'd be surprised if there's no friendly rearing its head by that stage of June.
I'd imagine there will be. I think pre-season starts middle-ish of June.
Yeah.
And then the first cup game will be the 12th of July. So that I would imagine there'd definitely be a friendly by that point in time.
And just One other thing I just wanted to ask you, gentlemen, George, you've been filming for Scotland almost literally. What are you going to do with this extremely long summer break?
Going to be editing podcasts, I think, and other things. I'll find something to edit, put it that way.
Can I just clarify that this is actually, I had the same today. Somebody said to me at work, saying, "Oh, it's the football finish now." Aye. Yeah, oh, you'd be glad to get your break. This is literally the busiest period of time now for me and George.
Yeah. It's the same, Cameron. You speak to Chris Aitken. This is going to be his busy time. I was asking him last week, are the Aitken family going to get a holiday? And he was like, it's going to be really hard because his wife's a teacher. So where do you fit it all in? It's busy times.
Yeah, I'd said to him after the Bonnyrigg game that obviously there was plenty of hard work went in since he came in the door, but I imagine it's like a different kind of hard work starts now sort of thing, that you need to kind of get everything set up so that you hopefully have a successful season coming up. But yeah, I imagine he'll be on his phone on a regular basis, we'll see.
So there we have it. That's Luke Blues talking, up and running. It's episode 1, but we're going to take a break now for the summer. But I suspect we'll be back certainly once the friendlies have reared their head, and we're looking forward to the League Cup. The draw for the League Cup is later this month. I guess, Brian, everybody underdog is wanting Hearts in their group.
Yeah, I'll be hoping to go to the playoffs this weekend, Lawrence, and then on the following Saturday, depending on the score, I'll probably travel through to Bonnyrigg, but hopefully they're still in the tie, and I'll make an effort to get to Edinburgh.
I don't know if we've got all 5, but George, Brian, myself, we're all going to the K Park on Saturday.
I'm just hoping that Brian makes it out of K Park alive after what he said last year.
The Whirlies Roundabout Appreciation Society will be out with pitchforks awaiting his arrival in the new town. So
just to say, Lawrence, Annan have taken the lead at Elgin.
They have indeed.
22 minutes.
Tommy Goss.
Tommy Goss.
Yeah, Gordon Hislop will be very excited about that one. So on that note, now we've had to mention Gordon Hislop. Let's call a halt there, guys. Have a good summer, everybody, and we'll see you once the football's back upon us.